Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you the IT task you must know when setting up a Windows computer. So this video is more for entry-level IT professionals like IT help desk, service desk, and for those who are not really familiar with the Windows environment yet because you're used to Mac or Linux. And if you want to learn more about setting up a Windows computer, this video is for you. Also in this video, we are going to be doing our hands-on lab on Windows 11 because Windows 10 is almost on its end of life this coming October of 2025, so it's better to learn all of this in a newer Windows operating system. So if you also want to try this activity at home to practice, so you're gonna need a Windows 11 Pro or Enterprise computer, or you can do a VM. You can spin up a VM with Windows 11 image. Make sure that it is Pro or Enterprise so we can add it to the domain later. And also basic Windows knowledge. Okay, so for the next part of this video, I'm gonna show you how to spin up a Windows 11 VM on a virtualization platform. But if you already have a Windows 11 computer or a VM, you can skip this into the next part where I will show you the common tasks that IT professionals do when setting up a Windows computer. Okay, so for this activity, you are free to use whatever virtualization platform that you're comfortable with or you're used to. I am just gonna use VMware Workstation because that's already installed on my computer, and if you want to use VirtualBox or Proxmox or other platforms, you are free to do that. Okay, so the next step is to download a trial version of Windows 11 Pro or Enterprise. So you can Google it and search for it. I usually just go to the evaluation center and you can see that there is an ISO download in here for free. And you can also use this Windows 11 Enterprise. This is very similar to, this is a version that we often use in the workplace aside from Pro. So go ahead and do the next steps. So you just need to fill up this form to register for the free trial, and after that you can download the ISO. Also keep in mind that the Windows 11 ISO is around 5 gigs, so you would need a flash drive that can accommodate that size. Okay, so once you are done downloading the ISO, you can now spin up a new VM. So for example, if you're using a VMware Workstation, you can just create a new virtual machine in here. And then I usually just click on next in here, and I always choose I will install the operating system later because I have my own ISO for Windows 11. That's the one that we just downloaded earlier. Click on next. Just select Windows 11 in here, 64-bit, and just name it whatever you want. And because Windows 11 requires TPM now to install, you need to install a password in here. Just make sure that this is something that you will remember later. Click on next and click on next. Just select on what kind of hardware you need for this. I'm just always going for the minimum for the labs. Just keep on clicking next in here. We really don't need anything special for this. Just select the recommended settings and select create a new virtual disk. Okay, so keep in mind before you install Windows 11 on your computer, if you're doing a virtual machine, that the minimum required storage needed to install Windows 11 is now 64 gig compared to the 24 gig minimum storage required for Windows 10. So it's more storage required, so make sure that your computer can accommodate 64 gigs to install Windows 11. Okay, so that's the minimum required. Let's click on next. And just next until you finish this. Okay, now let's install the ISO that we have downloaded earlier by right-clicking on the new VM and go to settings. So click on the CD SATA in here and select the use ISO image file. This is the ISO that we downloaded earlier, and browse where your ISO is located. So mine is located here, and we will install this. Okay, so once you have added that, power on the virtual machine now so we can set it up. just make sure that you press any key right away. Sometimes you might miss it and it doesn't go through boot or it doesn't boot up. Okay, so we are now setting up Windows 11 here. Just select the basic settings. Okay, I would like to install Windows 11 and let's agree on that. Okay, of course, let us scroll down and accept. Okay, it's just going through the basic setup for this. Okay, so if you are okay with the size and the space, just click on next. Okay, so it says that you won't be able to use your PC during installation. It's okay, we have a VM. So just click on install when you're ready and just wait for this to finish.
A few moments later.
Okay, so it took around 10 to 15 minutes before it got to this page. So I think it's now installed and ready to set up. So just the basic setup for now. So when it gets to this sign-in options, I'm just clicking on the sign-in options here. And I'll choose domain join instead because that's what we're gonna do later. So just enter in here an account that you'll use to log in. Okay, now that everything's up to date, we can now log into our Windows 11 machine. So it's Control Alt Insert for VMware and just enter your password.
2,000 years later.
Okay, so the first task we are gonna do in this video is to change the hostname of the computer. So this is one of the most common tasks of an IT professional in the workplace because we often assign the computer to different people, or sometimes when we have new computers, new laptops and devices, we change the hostname. So this is how you typically do it on a Windows 11 machine. So this is what I usually do. I just use the GUI and click on File Explorer here, or the folder icon on the taskbar. Right click on this PC in here, go to Properties, and you can click on rename this PC in here. For example, I'm just gonna name this East Charmer PC. I think spaces are not allowed. So if you click on next, it should apply the new host name. And whenever you are changing the host name, you are required to restart the computer to apply the changes. So just make sure that you're allowed to restart the computer when you're doing this. Okay, so let's check now. One way to quickly check the host name of the machine is to go to the command prompt and just type in host name, and you would see the host name. So it has changed the host name now. So that's how you do it on Windows 11. If you want to learn PowerShell commands, there's also a PowerShell command to change the host name of a Windows computer. So you can try this as well. You just have to memorize the command. Okay, so if you want to do the PowerShell command, you can search for PowerShell and click on the Windows, right click on the Windows PowerShell. Make sure to run as administrator in here. And then wait for the prompt. And then you can type in rename dash computer. You can press tab to auto-populate the command that you want in here, and then type in dash new name, double quotation, the host name that you want, and I'm also gonna add dash restart, so it'll also restart the computer right away to apply the changes. So if you're running this command, make sure that it's perfectly okay to reboot the computer and ask the user if that's okay. You don't want to be pissing off the user if the computer reboots in the middle of their work. So if you press and enter in here, it's gonna automatically restart, and it does all of that in just one command. Okay, so our next task is to set up a static IP address. In the workplace, we don't have to set up a static IP for all of our client machines, the user machines, but there are some special machines that we have to assign a static IP address to. It's not that often that we do this, but we have to do it for special computers. So this is how you do it through GUI. So on Windows 11, I typically just right click on the network icon down here at the very right, bottom right, and I click on network and internet settings, and then I go to the Ethernet, and then I click on advanced network settings here. I don't like how Windows 11 changed a lot of things when we were so used to Windows 10. Sometimes it's really hard to navigate through the GUI because they change it so much. So I just click on this Ethernet in here, and then at the bottom, which says more adapter options, I click on edit, and then this is the same window that we are familiar with from Windows 10. So you can click now on the IPv4, and this is how you can set up a static IP if you click on this. Okay, so if you're doing the home lab in here and want to follow along, what we're going to do is to go to your command prompt, because we need an IP address that we can use for the static IP. We can just use the IP address that is already assigned to your virtual machine. So if I type in here ipconfig, and then I'm just gonna copy the IPv4 address in here and use this as a static IP, so we don't have to figure out what static IP address we can use for our home lab. So I'm just gonna follow this. It should be 192.168.142.135, the subnet mask, that's correct, and the gateway 192.168.142.2. Usually we type in the DNS server. For now, I'm just gonna use the Google's public DNS server, 8.8.8.8, just so we have something here. But this is how you change the static IP address. And if you also want to do this via the PowerShell commands, you can also try that. So let's open PowerShell again. Type in PowerShell, right click, make sure you run it as admin, and then let's type netsh. This stands for network shell. This is the command if you want to manage and configure networks in PowerShell. Then let's type in interface IP set address name. This is kind of tricky because you have to know the name of the Ethernet that you're setting up, the exact name of the Ethernet connection that you're trying to configure in here. So let's make sure what it's called. So it's Ethernet 0. So you should type in the exact name for this to work. So Ethernet 0, don't forget the double quotation, space static, and the IP address that we want to use. Then the subnet mask. This is the easier part because we're just gonna copy it, 255.255.255.0, and don't forget the default gateway 192.168.142.2. Okay, for example, let's just change it back to DHCP so we can see if it really took our changes in here. So let's just move it back to DHCP for now, and we're gonna see if our command here works. So, and then press enter. Oh, we have an error in here. Following command was not found. Okay, because sorry about this, there should be a space between IP set and address. So let's try that again. Okay, we have another issue. Okay, typos. I have a lot of typos in here. Sorry about that. This should be 22255. Make sure that you're typing it also correctly. But this is actually training you on how to, spot the errors and fix the issues. So if you don't see any error message, that means that it worked. So let's check in our settings now if this worked. Okay, we were getting no internet access for now, but let's see if it applied the IP address. Okay, we just don't have DNS set up, but this is the command that you can use if you do want to use a PowerShell command instead of GUI for setting up a static IP. This is a more complicated way because you have to know the command, and if you do want to write scripts on doing this command, you can also do that. You just have to change the parameters in here for the correct IP address. Okay, our next task is to add the computer to a domain. This is also very common, especially for Windows computers, because we want to be able to control and manage all of our assets in the Windows environment, and Active Directory is the best tool to do that. So if you want to follow along this home lab, you need to have a Windows server installed on a VM that will act as your domain, so we can add the asset to that. But it's okay if you don't have the setup yet. I have videos to guide you on how to set up this server, and you can just watch this video to see where you can do it on Windows 11. And if you're gonna use it for work, then you would know how to set this up. Through the GUI, let's open File Explorer. Right click on the PC and click on Properties, and then scroll down to the very bottom and find not very bottom, but I'm so used to Windows 10, find the Advanced System Settings here, and then click on the Computer Name tab. And this is where I usually rename and add it to the domain, because earlier I think I've shown you how to rename this PC. But if you want to do it to add the domain as well at the same time, this is where you go. So you can just open one window and do it all in there. So before we do this, if you are following along and want to do it on your VM, let's make sure to add the DNS server on your Windows 11 machine, and that is the IP address of the Windows server that you have set up. Okay, let's click on the Network and Internet settings again, and click on Advanced Network Settings at the bottom, and click on the Ethernet here, and click on Edit for more adapter options. Click on IPv4. Let's just change this to DHCP for now, and just add the IP address of the Windows server as your DNS server in here. Okay, so now that we have a DNS, which is your Windows server in here, let's add this computer to the domain. Just click on Domain in here and make sure that you know what your domain name is. At work, just ask what your domain name is from your team if you're new to the job. So this is where you will enter it. In my case, it's eastcharmer.local. Then click on OK. And then of course it's gonna ask you for the admin account for your server. Make sure that you have access for this and you have the admin account. The only way you can add a machine to a domain is if you are a domain admin. So if you can see the welcome to the eastcharmer.local domain or welcome to the domain, it means that it works and you have just added the computer to the domain. Okay, so of course, to apply the settings, you must restart the computer. Okay, so the computer has rebooted, and let's see if it was added to the domain. So now we can use domain accounts to log into this computer, like your username and password, instead of just a local account from earlier. So just make sure that you have credentials for this, but you should now be able to log in to the domain. And if you can see this, it means that it's your first time logging in as an admin or as a domain user in here if this is a new computer.
A few moments later.
Okay, now let's try to do it using a PowerShell command. So since we already added this VM to the domain, let's undomain it or remove it from the domain. So let's go and do an advanced setting the same way how we added it to the domain. Let's right click on this PC, click on Properties, click on Advanced System Settings. Make sure that you're an admin to and same steps, go to Computer Name tab here, click on Change, and then let's select Work Group instead, and just type in Work Group in here to remove it from the domain. And it's just gonna give you a warning that you should know a local admin password account for the computer, so you'll be able to sign back in once we have undomained it. So let's continue on that, and it should be rebooting the computer after. Okay, so let's now log back in, and you should be able to log in with your local admin account in here. this was the credentials you set up when you first set up the computer. Okay, let's now open PowerShell. Right click and run as admin case. Okay, so the command for this is add computer, and when you press tab, it'll auto-populate for you, and then space dash domain name space double quotes your domain name. In my case, it's eastcharmer.local, so that is most likely your company domain, and then space dash credential space double quote, this is your domain. For example, it's eastcharmer, then slash admin, an admin account that you use or that you know, and then dash restart in here so it can restart right away. Alright, let's see if this works. Press enter after this command, and then of course it will prompt you for the password. Just make sure that you have an admin, domain admin credentials for this, and then it's just gonna reboot if your credentials are valid. So that is also a one-liner PowerShell command method that you can do instead of GUI if you want to add a domain through a PowerShell command. Alright, so let's do a quick test if that works. So let's go and select other user and then type in a domain user to see if it will log you in. Once it logs you in, it means that this computer was added to the domain. Okay, so another common task that we do as IT professionals on a Windows machine is adding local user accounts. So sometimes we have laptops that are not able to get corporate network access. That's why you need to create local user accounts for them if they are in the field. So to do that through the GUI, we can type in user in the search bar, and then if you see the edit local users and groups in control panel, click on that, and so you can see the local users and groups window will show up. Another way to quickly open that window is you can press Windows R and the run window will pop up, and then type in lusrmgr.msc, and that's another way to open this window. Okay, so in here there's two categories, users and groups. So if you want to create a local user account, click on users, and then in here you can see the other local admin accounts in here. You can enable accounts in here, but if you want to create a new one for a particular user, for example, you can right click on this and then click new user, and then just enter a name that you want. For example, remote user, and then really anything that you wanna type in here. And then password, you can uncheck on this and click user cannot change password. It really depends on your policy, but these are the options that you have. And if you click on create and close, you would see that this was created. So you can try and log in using this credential, the local user. Okay, next I will show you the different groups and what their purpose is. So if you have created local user accounts in here and you want to add them to particular groups, for example, admin groups or remote user groups, you can do that in the groups folder in here. So if we maximize this and look into the different groups, when I click on administrators, this is where you can add different users. For example, I'm going to add the newly created remote user in here. Let's just click on the add button and search for remote and check names. Oops. So make sure that the location is the PC because it's not under a domain, it's a local user account. And then when you check names, see remote underscore user, you should see the remote user account that we just created earlier. Click on OK and apply. Remote user is now part of the admin. You can also add remote desktop users in here. This is for the users who can remote into this particular machine, who can use the remote desktop software. For example, remote desktop connection. So if they want to remote desktop into this particular machine, you can add them in here so they will be able to access this. So same process, you can click on add and then make sure that you're pointing to the local computer location in here, and then type in the username and click on apply, and now you've added another user for that. Okay, so that would be it for today's video. That's some of the most common IT tasks that we do on a Windows machine, and now it's on the Windows 11 version if you want to try for your home lab. For the next video, we will set up a special computer and we will apply all of the tasks that we've done here and more tasks on how we manage and set up special computers that can auto log in and would be considered as a touchless machine because you don't have to log in and press buttons for programs to run. It'll be like a kiosk mode type of a machine, and if you're interested, stay tuned for that. But for now, that would be it for this video. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys on the next one.